Hi, Nerida. Hi, Chris. Thank you very much, Chris, for joining us today. Nerida and I are excited to try something a little bit different on Lead the Way, where we're doing these fire questions with topical and high-profile speakers. Today, we got Mr. Chris Lucas from the founding director, I should say, of the Lucas Group, the most high-profile restaurant group in Australia, with restaurants like Chin Chin, Kisumi, over 1,000 staff, and you're doing about 125,000 covers pre-COVID throughout your restaurants, and soon to be the very high-profile mystery restaurant that can be opening on 80 Collins Street, with most Melbournians were so excited about, which was supposed to open this month, actually. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, it was.
And Chris has restaurants throughout Sydney as well, which I'm sure Nerida does, but regular out. But unfortunately, Chris's restaurants are still not kosher. So my family and I will not eat there without bringing our own food. Now, we've had many conversations about this, and we can't work out a profitable model, but I'll still nudge you as much as you let me about introducing kosher into your restaurants. Chris, what would 3 ideas be that you have to kickstart the hospitality industry in the Melbourne and Sydney CBDs?
Okay, so the first idea, Zelman, of course, is the most obvious one. That we need to get the workers back into the city. And so if you look at a lot of the cities around the world at the moment that are going through staged reopenings, one of the critical elements is, of course, that we need to be able to get the CBD workers back in a safe way, but we definitely need to get them back. And so I think that that's the first critical step towards rebuilding the city of Melbourne, and in fact, rebuilding Sydney as well, and a lot of the cities around the world. So there needs to be a concerted effort from the governments, both at the local government level, i.e. the Melbourne City Council, and of course the state government, and even the federal government. I think that the governments at all levels have spent the last pet of 7 or 8 months dealing with this health crisis, and appropriately so. But now we're coming to the tail end of it. And even in Melbourne, as you can see, the infection rates are falling very dramatically, and within the next few weeks we hope to have some positive news from the government about reopening our industry. But opening our industry is going to be very challenging if we don't have the hundreds of thousands of workers back in the city. So we need to really encourage the Melbourne City Council, the Mayor, and in fact the state government through the Premier and his office, to start transitioning from the messaging of health crisis and the risks associated with this current epidemic. And at some point in time, they're going to have to draw a line in the sand. They're going to have to declare that this crisis is over and that we have to live with the virus and that we can manage it, as New South Wales is successfully doing, and is in fact the rest of Australia is successfully doing. And the sooner we get to that, we need to then start instilling confidence in the market. And we need to show some leadership, because the hospitality workers are going to lead the charge. They'll be back in the restaurants forthwith, because in fact, they never left the restaurants. As you know, during this lockdown, a lot of our hospitality workers worked very hard to provide a vital and essential service through takeaway. But now the governments need to call in all the big corporate heavyweights, the large employers who occupy the big buildings, and to say to them, we need a plan, a staged plan, but an effective plan that outlines key dates. And they need to get an agreement from those employers that they will do whatever they can to bring their workforces back to the city. The government, at the same time, needs to outline a public transport and a framework that will instill confidence that they can safely travel back into the city. There's been so much talk about working from home, and it's a new paradigm, and it's going to change things forever. And I think that was the sort of talk that was going around in the first couple of months of the lockdown. But I think now, after 7, 8 months, maybe 9 months of what has been the longest lockdown in globally of any city of our size, that I think the fatigue and the mental anguish of working from home is starting to really kick in. That is going to be the most significant and most important initiative that we can think of. Everything else, to a certain extent, pales into insignificance without those people back in the city. So I think that's the first and most foremost thing. The second thing is that I believe the first part of the economy that's going to bounce back is the nighttime economy. We stand at the ready to go back to work, as you've publicly seen me espouse. We've developed one of the most extensive, comprehensive COVID safe plans of any state in Australia. We've learned from the experiences of opening up our restaurants in other states, and we've built that experience into a world-class COVID safe model for Victoria. That COVID safe model has now gone to the government, both the state and federal and local government. It's been endorsed by the federal minister. It's been endorsed, I believe, or soon to be endorsed by the Prime Minister and the Treasurer. It has also been endorsed by the great majority of the restaurant community, if not the entire restaurant community. So we stand at the ready to reopen our doors now. If not now, within the next few weeks. And the reason why I think it's so essential that we get back is because we are at the tail end of this virus. We can see that the numbers are coming down. And we can also see that the government is now doing its bit to improve its contact tracing and cluster management, just like they have done in other states. So the two-pronged strategy which is in place should see us safely reopen the economy. Over the last few days, as you saw, construction workers have now been granted the opportunity to go back to work. Even abattoirs, which are one of the most high-risk environments in the world, have been granted permission to go back to work. The abattoirs, which are going back to work, are going to be producing poultry, meat product, etc. 60% of their product, Zolman and Nerida, relies on having a restaurant industry open. So the two go hand in hand. And that's our position that we're espousing with the government. If you've opened one key element of it, of the food chain, then you need to open the retail element of the food chain. And if you can open a high risk environment like abattoirs, which have had numerous high profile outbreaks during this pandemic, then surely you can open the restaurant sector, which nationally, I should point out, has virtually had no outbreaks of COVID, and in some cases, zero, as in Victoria, when we traded for that short period of time.
That's interesting.
So I think it's logical to say that the economy, as you know, Nerida, because you're an economist, it works on a number of dominoes. You can't action one element of the economy without having a domino effect throughout the economy. And in that case, our point is those dominoes are now started to fall. And we can't stop the momentum, nor should we stop the momentum. The restaurant sector, cafe sector, events, and in fact the small business sector, which also includes little businesses like hairdressers and nail salons and dry cleaners and so forth. There's 1.2 million small businesses in Victoria which are still lying idle, with over 1 million workers sitting on the sidelines. It's the engine room of this economy. And it will be the first part of the economy that will re-employ and re-engage. Those for lease signs will remain and grow if we can't get tenants to fill them. And the first wave of tenants, you'll know this better than anyone, Zolman, is going to be small business. It's going to be those people that will risk their capital to go back out and bravely open up another little cafe or another restaurant or another bar or a hair salon or a dry cleaner or a nail salon or a sushi shop or a small gallery. This is the heart and soul of this city. And the third part is that there needs to be micro and macro reform from our governments. They can't sit back and take the credit for having dealt with this crisis. Because this crisis has done nothing more than reset this economy strip the wealth from this economy, cause a huge level of unemployment and dysfunction. The job has only just begun. Yes, we've done a great job in Australia, as you know. We're luckier than most. I think yesterday, nationally, there was only 11 new cases of coronavirus in a population of 25 million people. It's over. Yes, it's safe to say that. It really is. I know that there's certain people that don't want to say it because it suits them to prolong this so-called crisis. But for all intents and purposes, it's over. Now, it doesn't mean to say, of course, that we need to take things for granted and slack off. We still need to wash our hands and be sensible about things. But it doesn't mean to say that we need to spend the whole rest of our lives with face masks and scared of a virus that's here to stay.
Chris, on the obviously the hospitality industry has seen a lot of job losses. It has been the sector of the economy that has been hit one of the hardest. I mean, tourism is probably the only other one that has been hit as hard. I mean, and the other thing too is that it does employ a lot of very young people. So obviously their livelihoods have been ruined in many cases or significantly set back, and that has huge ramifications for mental health. So what's your solution to handling the rising mental health issues, and particularly in the hospitality industry?
First and foremost, and again, I don't want to be simplistic about it, but the quick solution here is get back to work. We need to get normality back in our lives. The young people that you talk about are the ones that I care about the most. And yes, they have struggled. They haven't had the experience or the maturity to be able to deal with curfews and lockdowns. They've been disconnected from their families, their parents, their grandparents, and their friends. And they're struggling. But we need to get them back to work. They want to go back to work. And that will be the first step to getting their life back into some balance and some normality. The second thing is I ask all employers to review their HR policies and their culture, because these kids are going to need help reintegrating back into the workforce. And so we need to look at our operations and how we run our businesses to take into account that there has been some mental trauma. These people have struggled. And yes, it will help a great deal to get them back to work, but we've got to be cognizant and sensitive of it. So it's a two-pronged issue. Get them back to work and then nurture them and look after them and support them.
Yeah, good advice.
That's really well said. Chris, you're widely known as a restaurant king of Australia, the man along Flinders Lane, the best restaurateur with the most sexiest restaurants. So in your opinion, what would restaurants look like in 2021? And this whole delivery platform that's been created and accelerated, I should say, during this COVID period, is that here to stay? Or is that something that will end once restaurants reopen?
Oh, well, I don't think it's quite as black and white as that, Zalman. But yes, I think that people will revert very quickly back to going out and experiencing restaurants, because restaurants, Zalman, as you know, are not just about the provision of food and beverage. They're about providing an experience and a human connection. You probably met your beautiful wife in a restaurant, maybe, or if you did meet her, you probably on your first date took her out to a restaurant. So at the end of the day, we all did the same thing, and we want to bring that magic back. Will there be some element of takeaway? Probably. But will it be what it is today? Probably not. There's no replication for the restaurant experience. You can't do it via Zoom. You can't get it in a box, okay? And you can't freeze it and send it across across the city. You have to come in and rub shoulders with people. And in your case, Zalman, if you're lucky, you might get to meet some clients who you're going to very desperately need as you move forward to try and fill the millions of vacancies that are going to be across our city. So I think it's very, very important to put it all in perspective. Let's not lose our minds because of this virus, Zalman and Nerida. We still are humans. And I'm looking forward to the day where I can put my arms around Zalman, give him a hug, even though I don't normally do that with real estate agents. right? And just express my thanks to him for being supportive to the industry. You can't just buy that, as I said to you, in a box. So I don't think the restaurant experience will diminish. It'll be here, and to be quite honest, I think it'll be stronger.
Any structural changes we can anticipate next year?
Well, I think it'll be a transition year, Zelman. You just can't wipe out an entire industry and think it's going to bounce back tomorrow morning. But it's going to be up to people like me, I guess, and other great restaurateurs and chefs and professionals to get their creative hats on and think about what we can do. And of course, the first thing we're going to be doing, Zelman, as you know, is we're going to be opening our new project at 80 Collins Street, which will be one of the most significant and most exciting restaurant projects in Australian history. And we were supposed to be open right now. This was the month that we were supposed to be opening. And I can't wait to fling those doors open and get the excitement and the magic of going back to new restaurants all over again. And get Melbourne back on the map as the food capital of this country. And that's going to be our job, not the government's job, which they espouse their dogma of they're going to solve all the problems that, quite frankly, a lot of them were created by them. The problems are going to be solved by free enterprise, entrepreneurs, rebuilding that entrepreneurial spirit that's lying dormant there at the moment. And Melbourne has a great entrepreneurial spirit. And we've got to rebuild it. And it's going to come from people like us, all of us, you, Nerida, myself, average Victorians who have made a contribution and will continue to make a contribution.
Chris, we've got city council elections coming up, so potentially a new Lord Mayor or maybe Sally Capp coming back. One of the options for getting activity back into the city is to enlarge this concept of outdoor dining. I mean, do you think that can work in the city, and what are your views around it?
I've been on the public record to say that it's a nice to have, but it's not a replication or an alternate business model for what is a predominantly indoor dining city. As you know, Melbourne's quite a cold place, and our industry and our food culture is built around the comfortable confines of a beautiful restaurant. Now, I love alfresco dining, but this ain't Barcelona. This ain't the Mediterranean, okay? This is more akin to London or Tokyo. We're a cool climate city. So I encourage anything, any idea that will help invigorate the city, and to a limited extent, some outdoor dining will work, but it's only a very small part of the overall market. And it's a very simplistic solution to think that somehow you're going to be able to replace the 88,000 internal seats that are in the current market and have them running up and down Flinders Lane, rain, hail or shine. And as we've seen in the last few days, it's been more rain and hail than it has been shine.